Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. And today I am hanging out with special guest Andrew Armstrong, who came on a very short notice, which we greatly appreciate. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well. It's a snowy, cloudy day in Colorado Springs, which I love, and living the dream of gaming all the time, even
So
when I
is
should be
it
working.
actually snowing?
No, it's preparing to. It's coming together, and I love this is my excuse is I love justifying my staying inside all day. By I look outside, I'm like, oh, it's it's not very pleasant out there. It's cold, it's snowy, so it's best that I stay right here.
I feel you. I did snow removal for about 10 years, so I never wanted it to snow. Because like a snow removal day, like starts at like 18 hours and then just gets worse from there. But now I don't have to work in it. I'm like, bring on the snow. I love the idea of being trapped in my house and not really being able to go anywhere and go out, maybe shovel some snow, play with the kids.
And I was a school teacher for 6 years, and we desperately like, it's a snow day, please. We need a little break. Just give me a day off, just one. Please.
Yeah, you guys are putting the spoons under your pillow. You're like, you want extra credit, kids? You better get those spoons under that pillow.
I can honestly admit I don't know what you're talking about. Some superstition.
It is.
Okay. Yeah, I figured as much. But yeah, it's really good, and glad to be here in 2018. I think I've been here, once for each year thus far.
Nice. Yeah, like I said, I love that weather. It just looks everything looks so pretty. Go out and play in it. But now it's reversed because my wife has a job where she does like dispatch stuff when it snows, so she gets stuck. Fortunately for her, it's like real close to where we live, so it's not too big of a deal. But I guess you guys didn't come to listen to us talk about snow and stuff. You guys always want to talk about funny shaped dice and playing make believe is my understanding. So do you have any plans for 2018?
So I kind of sort of took December off a little bit, and 2018 for me started off, we're all very sick, but that happens, but kind of to not rest on my laurels so much. It's kind of like things are going well, and I could just do like the minimal amount and we'll still be all right. But I really want to kind of push and focus and really hone in on what I love to do and what the audience really appreciates, which are not always the same thing, as my audience clamoring for me to talk about how to become a rotting corpse with magic powers is incessant. I don't want to help you become a lich. It's not a good thing to do.
Is that in game or out of game?
There's a bit of both. Whenever you I don't know if you guys have any videos on, say, like Cthulhuian Lovecraftian mythos. I get a comment every now and again from one of two kinds of people. One is, this isn't how it actually works. This is how it actually works to summon Lord Cthulhu. This is the right way. Then other people come on in the radical kind of fundamentalist Christian will be, do not promote the blasphemy of the Dark Lord. Your soul must be saved. I'm like, it's make believe, guys. It's not
you kind of just hit one of my hot buttons, and that is Cthulhu.
Oh yeah,
and like I just hate it when I talk to someone and I realize that they're these huge Cthulhu fans and they talk about Cthulhu, but they never actually read any Lovecraft. It just irks me.
I will freely admit that I have I tried to read the Mountains of Madness, and I only got a little bit into it, and I was just like, I guess you invest, and then it's called the Mountains. What is it called? The where he's in Antarctica and he's moving towards the mountains.
First of all, the thing about Lovecraft is it's all anthologies. They're all short. They're all essentially short stories to some degree or another. So depending. I have terrible retention, but I've read several of the anthologies. They're really good, but it's like reading Tolkien, right? If you read a lot of modern writing and then go back to read Tolkien, I find it really difficult to enjoy that now. And I know it's like blasphemy, in our hobby, but I just don't like that style of writing. the story's pacing is really slow, and essentially it's too gritty and real, which makes it kind of boring to me.
Well, that's interesting. In the dynamic shift of storytelling to be more gritty and realistic equals better. You look at your superhero movies now, where it's very dark, and then the movies like Guardians of the Galaxy come out, which are not so dark and gritty, and people love them. And that's been a tonal shift too for me in my games. And one of the neat things I'm doing in 2018, which is weird to say, but I'm running a game for free. I'm running a game.
Blasphemy.
I know. With players that I picked to play out a specific theme because I was just really passionate about it, and I didn't want anything, any money, any pledging, any arrangements to muddy the waters. And I'm doing that tomorrow night. We're starting it off, and the theme of the game is it has a twist. I've been watching a lot of Black Mirror. But they're a theater troupe exploring this forgotten lake and around the lake in these different places, and I'm really excited about it. I like all my games, but the ones that you end up being really, really passionate, I find it was hard to just do those things because there's other constraints. Is it good for the channel? Are the patrons going to want this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So I'm doing something for me, kind of an approach with that game.
I kind of feel that way with the Scarlet Sisterhood game, and by far it is probably like my favorite game to run and that I've ever run is because I did it for me, for my own reasons. Like I put that group together because it's always been a bunch of dudes playing the game, or significant others that really didn't want to be there. So I was like, you know what, I just want a different experience, and I put that game together, and I have so much fun with those players. They are a blast. That they're so invested in the game, and I come to that game to run it, I think, for the same reason that people come to watch it, because they want to see what they're going to do. Like, what are they going to do this week?
Absolutely. I'm running less games. That's a new 2018, and focusing on publishing and kind of other areas. Just because while running games, I love the prep, and then I don't love the few hours or the even days between when I'm prepped and then having to run, because I'm all nervous and like, is it going to be good? Then once the game starts, this is glorious and where I want to be. But by having so many different games that I was running 6 or 7 a week, I think when I was doing this a couple years ago. So now I'm way scaled back. I'm playing in some games. That's really important to focus in on. Getting to be a player. Being Jardin was a fantastic experience, and I'm playing in a few Starfinder game, and just get that opportunity to take a breath. Just sit and play one character. That's a big priority and really important.
It is refreshing. even for me, like I play 3 games a week, and then we have a couple games we play in person that either happen or don't happen. And it's like, when they don't happen, it's like, oh, I'm just going to spend the weekend with my family instead of gaming. That's okay, because I get plenty of games during the week. So there's a nice thing to that, and it's like, finding that balance with all things in your life.
Yeah, that's been really challenging to discover that balance, because I'm working from home. It's so easy to just not just play a video game or slack off, or kind of reschedule things around and not be disciplined, because there's no one telling me anything. I have to tell myself, and I've always been a bit generous with myself in letting myself get away with a lot of things. So that's something definitely working on too, because we're in the midst of a D&D explosion and growth, and it's great to be there, but there's really a lot to be seized, and you got to carpe diem the D&D and what's going on here to really make the most of it. And that can be like, you got to do a little more here. You got to push. You got to go. You know,
done something I haven't really done previously. For gaming, I watched my first full episode of Critical Role, and my wife actually watched it with me. So we're gonna start
a new season or
the new one. Yeah, the new one. I'm not going back. That's way too much. It's too daunting. And you know, and frankly too, like even like the original campaign, they started somewhere in the middle anyway. So you know that was already going on. So I've started with this one, and you know we got we have our first video coming out. I think we're going to put it out next week, so it gives people plenty of time to see the episode if they're interested in. And you know, me and Ted fight a little bit about some of Matt Mercer's style and how he runs the game. So you guys can check that out.
No, that there was a temptation for me because if I put Critical Role or Matt Mercer in the title of a video, people will click it more than they will click how to be a better gamer or the important tips for making your game great. And it's got a greater reach and is more familiar. I don't know. I still can't watch other people play. It just frustrates me that either it's not me or I wouldn't do it that way, or why am I not just playing myself?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I get it's great that it's there and all that it's done, and I'm sure it entertains lots of people. But just because it doesn't entertain me doesn't mean you have to, you know, be upset about that. It's great. And I don't know that I'll watch it. I was definitely tempted to. I'm going to do a review of every episode of New Critical Role. And I just you know what? I don't want to do that.
Yeah. It's part of that. Part of me was just like, you know what? I really just want to see what this is all about. And I will say this right here is like, no one can live up to the hype that is Matt Mercer and Critical Role, including Matt Mercer. I feel so bad for the guy. Like, you know, having met him a couple times and watching the game, it was great. And they've got a great cast that they're entertaining. But, you know, so I wanted it from that aspect. And then also, you know, my wife was willing to sit there. She's not a gamer. So she was willing to sit there and hang out with me and watch it with me. So that was kind of cool too. You know, I don't know how long we'll do it for, but for now it's fun. I want to see where it goes. Okay. But it's a huge time investment. You're talking about 3 hours, and my understanding is they don't have a set end time. They like end when they're done. So you know, it could be 5 hours next time.
Yeah, it's not for me, which is ironic in that I put out games where, you know, people want to see it, and there's, I think, of definite importance to, if you are promoting like tutorials and game tips and like, this is how you should play and here's some guides on doing it, there absolutely needs to be matched you playing the game to see it in action. It's certainly fine to just grandstand and talk about yourself and all these things, but we need to see you in the game, see if that's real, as a validation. And then also, I do understand the entertainment value of, you know, I can't play, or this is great. A lot of people have shared they listen to the games, they don't watch them while they're doing other work or dishes or whatever. And you know, getting people excited about the game is excellent. And I'm really looking forward to the game we're starting tomorrow, to have, you know, some back and forth, some audience interaction, and not like Will does, but to the level where we had a campaign a few years ago that generated a lot of audience involvement in creating, you know, art of the characters, you know, fan art, and people would collect, you know, take notes on the campaign, and it was really neat. And it really enhanced the experience. So I'm looking to do that again with a very character-centric, role-play-centric kind of game, which those are my favorite anyway. But
well, you know, that's the best. They're like the best parts about the game anyway. Like, especially from when you're streaming it, the part that's actually kind of boring is the part that is people really enjoy at the table, and that is the combat. you know, it's more about, and it's like any show, right? A good show is about the interactions between the characters, and everything else is kind of like the backdrop.
My kitten, we got a new kitten. That was a new 2018 thing. He's really annoying my other cat. I apologize for the noise. But no, I agree entirely that what the combat in D&D to me is the least kind of interesting element, though I really enjoy the mechanics and coming up with new feats and new custom abilities, and I like optimizing my characters, really powerful mechanical characters. If they don't have a heart and soul, I'll go get him, audience. If they don't have a heart and soul, if I don't get to learn about the other people, learn about the characters, this is universal in any kind of media, any movies, any games, any books. If you don't get time to know the character, you don't care about what happens to them. So that's, to me, just so important to encourage and take time for that in every game. He ran away. I have 2 cats, just 2. That's it.
Not a farm over there.
No, we have one that I've had for 10 years, and then this new one we got kind of for charisma to play with, and they could grow up together a little bit. So yeah, it's
I find that can be a terrible thing to do to an animal, depending on how your child is. Do you remember Elmira from Tiny Toons?
Tiny Toons, yeah.
My daughter was very much like that with the cats. Okay. She would be carrying the cat around in a very awkward position, going, ow, 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 because the cat's not happy and it's just kicking with its back legs, clawing at her stomach. I'm like, why don't you just let it go?
Okay. We're going to deviate from tabletop gaming because you are an experienced father. My wife and I are now finding ourselves in the transition between kind of nurturing and life support and behavior alteration and parenting. And it's specifically about the interaction between Charisma and the kitten, where she's really testing boundaries. Like, what do you, not with the kitten exactly, but like with us, where she's, we'll squeeze it too much or carry it around in an awkward way or those kind of things. And we're having to think of, like, now we have to alter this behavior. We have to parent, and it's really like, oh, I don't want to admit, but it found myself like, I didn't enjoy you as much as I normally do because I have to discipline you now. And that's a weird sensation to go from just loving all the time, oh, what a beautiful, to you did something that's not good and I have to help you fix it. And it feels so awkward and like hurts. I don't know. How did you handle the cat stuff?
The cat stuff?
Or just early parenting, that kind of thing.
Yeah, she was rough on the animals. She loved them so much, which was the problem. But you just have to talk to them and try and explain, this hurts, that hurts them, this is painful, and explain, like, I've had weird things. Like, we had a 100-pound chocolate lab for the longest time. My daughter grew up with him, and she now wants to get a tattoo of his paw print. She's 13. She's not getting a tattoo anytime soon. And I have a bunch of tattoos. But, like, she was like 3, and I look over, and it's just this weird tableau that's in front of me, and I'm going, what? My brain couldn't comprehend because I couldn't find my child's other arm. I'm like, and then the dog is just giving me this look, and I realized she's got like her whole arm down his throat, and he's like, could you do something about this? He was so good. But wow. And she's just looking like, what? I'm just exploring the inside of the dog through his throat. Like, oh God, child, you cannot do that.
Yeah, she's a 2.5 now, and the testing stage is really in full force, and she's our only first child, so it's definitely new, very new.
You only get one first child.
Yeah. That is true. Yes.
No. And they say, well, I hate to break it to you, they say like terrible 2s. It's not, 3s are worse.
No, her 2s, like 1.5 to 2.5, have been really great. but we're starting to see this threes are worse. Okay.
It's when their personalities start to form and they start to develop as little people. And oh my God, I'm like, my kids, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, this is why other species eat their young. You're the reason. I love them. What are you going to do? They're trying, they test you, but in the end, it becomes rewarding. And then, and then it gets easy for a while, and then they become teenagers and it gets hard again. Mm-hmm. But then, maybe you can introduce them to gaming and, share your hobbies with them. So, right. With my son, I got to do that. So that was fun.
Yeah, well, that's that. I mean, I'm already using charisma in some videos, and she's aware of, she likes her dragon bag and likes to play with toys and read the books, and but I'm assuming that like when the personality really starts to develop, it'll shift away to other things, and then you got to kind of reintroduce, here's daddy's work / hobby, he loves it, and but now you have to give it another try when you come in.
The Dragon Baggins video was really good. I enjoyed that, but the one that really had me laughing was the dice are rolling. I was like, he literally just did a sponsored video, gave the kid the dice to play with. She's like spitting the dice out.
My wife was just off camera, just in case people were concerned. But she's played with dice for a long time. And yes, Unicorn Hoodlum. My daughter's name is Charisma. In fact, as extra added, her initials are CHA. Bam. It's the only one I'm going to
get. That was your gimme?
That was, well, I don't know, like, what the second child, I mean, people who dexterity or strength or stuff, but it's like charisma is a Greek word. It means spirit, it means grace, and it has all these other connotations that is so like perfect. It was like the perfect name for her for this situation, and I'm completely blank on like the second kid's gonna be Bill. I like it, like it does, like I can't, not that Bill's a bad name, but like I set the bar real high and I have nothing. The kids get nothing as far as my creative naming.
You poured it all into the first one.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. So now the second one will fight that much harder for your affections.
I guess so.
Two children enter, one leaves. So we got some questions coming in, and I missed. Sorry, guys. I just enjoying having conversation with Andrew here. So, James, is there any programs that help you keep multiple games ready and prepped? I'm running 3 games a week. The program I was using just kind of died. That sucks.
We actually answered this question on Ask a DM a couple of days ago, and there's a lot of ways to do that. You can use Facebook groups, have a separate Facebook group for each game, a separate Discord channel. There's a Obsidian Portal, I think, is a website that has a lot of good campaign management. There's a few in the works that I guess I can't talk about too much, like Realmworks. I saw it at Gen Con that they were developing these kind of campaign portfolios, separate Roll20 pages, separate servers and campaigns on Fantasy Grounds, those kind of things.
Beyond has some stuff built into it for campaigns.
I organize them. I guess it's not old school because it's on the computer, but I have a campaign folder. Look, I'll share. And that to me is the way that I keep my campaigns separate, is just to literally or digitally put them into separate folders. And so each campaign has its own stuff. And so like, here's a campaign we ran, and I've got the NPC's art, I've got the maps, I've got each location's broken down into the maps and the NPCs that are there. I have the monster stat cards, I have the notes for that session and those sort of things. And this helps me, not only do I get, Save Dice time, trying to, I've got everything organized. Here's the soup. That was a fun meme. I have lots of images that couldn't be explained any other way, that they're like, yeah, context. But what really is really great is I can go back, review the notes, and then even copy stuff from one campaign to the next, or like these items worked really well, let me pull it over, all that kind of stuff. So that's how I organize them and keep them separate.
So for you, it's more about having a system that you use. World Anvil is another good site.
That was a name that I thought of. Yeah.
I know Jim Davis was swearing by it for a little while. I don't know if he's using it or not. I poked around in there, and it looks really cool, and there's a lot of cool features and interconnectivity for things. So it seems really useful. But for me, I've just been, for the last couple of years, just DMing from the fly almost all the time. So I have notes, but all of my notes happen after, during the game, from what's going on. And it really looks like someone from the asylum got a hold of a piece of paper and a pen.
Right. Well, I think taking notes during sessions is hugely important for good DMing, so that you listen to what, not just notes of the stats or whatever, but you listen to your players and you write down things that are important to them, that they bring up, and then you can come back around, review those notes, and you can reintroduce the content, and it shows that you were listening, that what the players' actions are doing have ramifications and matter. I think we all want to matter. We want our choices to matter in life and everything. And by taking that extra step to keep the notes and really say, yeah, I heard you, and what you do matters to me and in this game.
That's super important. And not only that, though, it's like it makes the game better in the sense that when the players see things come back that maybe they either interacted with or they caused to happen, it makes them buy in deeper to the world, like you said, and it makes things matter. And then you, because I know you get this question too, my players won't take my plot hooks, right? Well, when you go back through your notes and just reintroduce things they've been interacting with, you never have that problem. They go after those hooks every time, because they've already told you they like it. You're not trying to feed them your story.
Absolutely. And that's again, reiterating the session zero, and the importance of that is that you don't just show up and hope everything works out and start the game with people they all made their characters separately. No one really knows what the campaign's about, and you just hope it works. That's insane. Instead, get everyone together, say, here's a campaign idea I have. Let's work it. Let's play around with it. And let me hear what you really like in games, what you really like tonally, and which of the pillars you like the most. And then let's talk about your characters, how they know each other, how they interact with the world. And now there's no, everyone's already talked about it. It's so important. You can have good games without them, but it's like a roll of the dice. I mean, it's hoping. I hope this works. I hope they like it. I hope they get along. You don't have to hope. You can make it happen.
Speaking of session zero, how many session zeros do you feel like you had to have before it was really working for you, before you're getting everything out of it?
A good number. It took me a while, and I've put together a checklist, a session zero checklist that developed out of doing a bunch of them and forgetting to, I learned, I should have asked this. I should have asked this. I should have asked this. And I need to go back and re-update it again, because I'm learning things all the time. But here it is. That there's different kind of phases. Like some games, we just talked about the game, and you got to realize that the group, you have to make a group too, not just, you have to get the players connecting, let them to know each other, let them to, feel comfortable with each other. You have to be really clear on the, everyone agrees to come and show up at the right time in the right place. Then there's game style discussion, what you like, what's important to you in your games. And then only then do you get to the campaign stuff of the meat of the system and the setting, because if you don't have a strong foundation of a group that all wants to work together, that is of a similar mindset and style, and because you're people, then you're players. So you need to really do the work to make sure that you gel as players before you can hope anything to really work very well. So yeah, this needs a revision as well. There's a lot I learned here, but oh yeah, dozens of session zeros that needed to, that didn't ask this important thing, didn't bring this up, and then it caused a problem later in the game. So it's a lot of refining that's gone into it. But I've learned a lot, doing DMing full time, is there's so much more outside the game that facilitates great gaming than your savviness with the mechanics, your storytelling, your voices, etc., etc. If you set the foundation in organization and expectations, that does so much more to help you once the game gets going. For sure.
Yeah, I ask you that because one of the folks in the chat, in our Facebook group, he had mentioned that he broke the session zero. He was concerned about that, and I don't know if it was his first one he's done or hasn't done that many, but it's like anything. It's like each time you do it, you get more out of it, and it gets better. So like maybe that one time you did it, the first time you did it, it wasn't great for your group. They didn't understand what it was you're doing, and maybe you as the GM still didn't have a full idea. You just knew it was something that's going to help the game and you should do. But then when you actually do it, like actually experiencing it from both sides of the table, really changes that. And I know the very first one I did was terrible, and then they get less terrible the more of them you do, and it's a really new concept to us.
Absolutely. That's not just that's everything in this hobby. Is you don't expect to start perfectly. You're gonna mess up a ton, and then it's more about messing up less as time goes on and learning from your mistakes. For sure. I get paid. People seek me out and pay me to run games for them. I still make mistakes all the time. I still need a lot of feedback. I'm still refining it. It's not I'm done. I'm the best GM ever, and I don't need to do anything. It's always, if you're really serious about it, you are always looking for ways to improve, and we all starts not knowing what we're doing and figuring it out.
Well, to speak to that, right? I know, like, people have told me that why they watch a lot of stream games, and Chris Perkins will mess up the rules, right? He probably wrote that rule,
Absolutely. And I think it's important, and they listed at the beginning of the Dungeon Master Guide, I'm pretty sure in 5e and in most editions, but to realize another really key DMing mindset is that everyone needs to kind of understand. This is why session zero, again, important to emphasize your DMing philosophy, is the rules are there to facilitate the experience. And in many ways that can also, be the story and the characters. I don't know that I would say, I can't speak to specific examples, but if Chris Perkins is messing up the rules, if he's doing so to improve the experience there, then that, I believe, is the right way to be seeing the rules. You're not an arbiter. You're not a computer server that is just supposed to be there to, you do this, okay, here's the automatic response. And I'm just, no, you're there with a mission to facilitate their fun. And that means use the rules, bend the rules, throw the rules out as appropriate.
Well, there's also the factor of, there's 5 editions of the game now. Each edition has a bunch of core books that are really thick. And then when you compound that times 5, it's real easy to just misremember something or, inject something from a do that all the time and totally get flack for it all the time. But we spent so much time playing 3.5 and the terminology is so similar, but maybe they changed one little thing. Like turn and round used to mean something different.
Right. Oh, I'm still injecting every now and again stuff from Pathfinder, which is 3.5, into my understanding of a rule or how this mechanic would work. Even in my how to make a 5th edition D&D character, my tutorial, I mess stuff up. Like I use Pathfinder rules sometimes in there, and it's it's a very natural thing to do, and it's not something you should attack people over, right? They're learning. We all make mistakes. They're not a flawless compendium of rules who execute it without any error or anything like this. No, everyone's got to be a lot more forgiving and patient with one another when it comes to this game.
So I want to jump into the chat a little bit because I know we've just been talking back and forth, which I really enjoy. But I know you guys are out there too, which we appreciate you hanging out with us for the conversation. Kyle Ellis has a question. I think this one should resonate with you. Do you think people saying a class is always good, evil stems from older editions where good and evil were cosmic forces with universal laws? New books focus less on what is universally good, bad.
Here's the kitten, by the way, for those who wanted to see.
And another internet star was born.
There's enough cats on the internet, but so this might be slightly, it's always controversial when you talk about good and evil. But I think there's been a societal shift behind this, and the subjectivity of morality has become, this is my theorizing, stepping back. I don't have perfect concrete evidence for this, but just a hypothesis that as morality became more subjective, or whether it did or didn't, as a societal element, the idea that good and evil were fixed is less and less kind of the cultural mores of, your morality is whatever you want it to be. Good and evil is just the eye of the beholder. It's just your own perspective. And when, as the more, for good or bad, the more morality of, we'll call it Judeo-Christian values of clear cut, distinctions, as the waters get more and more muddied, as they have, for a long time, that it becomes a burden on many people. They see it that way, and they're shifting. We see that in 5e, I think, more than postmodernism. That's it. Thank you, SR2 Joker. That I think that has seeped into this game. And we see alignment restrictions 10 years ago. Now we don't. And I think a lot of something that has had it's reflecting a culture, certain cultural movements, and that anything goes kind of mentality is present in the book, in the basic rules. And some people really like that. Some people, as we mentioned earlier, the idea of dark, gritty superheroes. If you go back and look at, like, Princess of Mars was one that immediately comes to mind. The heroes are heroes, the bad guys are bad guys. There's no confusion, and it's clear. But as you muddy more and more, and you have Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, where no one is good and everyone does whatever they want, and there's no heroes. That's why I can't watch the show anymore. Is that the postmodernist idea? So that's my theory, is that has had an influence of late on the tabletop gaming situation, and that there's people who found the alignments restrictive because they always wanted to do whatever they wanted, which they still can. The alignments are just guidelines too, but they are guidelines that are in hot debate because certain people don't believe in objective morality. You can't have alignments if you don't have objective morality. It's just pointless. There's no point. You think you're chaotic evil, he thinks you're chaotic good, whatever. I mean, if it's just up to you, it doesn't work. So I think the idea of that we as we poke at or erode or whatever objective morality, we get into the situation where it's harder to define good and evil, and that if it's just up to you, then anything goes. And that means you have evil paladins, which is, to me, such a clash. He's the champion of a deity, and if the evil deity, they have a champion. Well, that's the cleric. Come on, dude. But it's just incongruent to me. So I would say, very importantly, if you're going to use alignment, you should set a very clear parameters, because in D&D, they do still have the realm. They have the multiverse. They have heaven and hell and alignment based afterlives and planes. They have that in the base system. So you need to define what is lawful good mean? What does evil mean in your setting? You have to define that such that then you can say, oh, are necromancers evil or not? Are paladins, can they be whatever? Do they have to follow a certain thing? Are druids, how do we view undead, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? If you define those things, then you can operate. Then you can say, this is good, this is not good, based on the setting that we are defining it. But if you don't define it, then how can you expect to enforce or really, have a spell like detect evil when you can identify as whatever alignment you want? So like, I choose not to feel evil right now, so I'm not evil. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I feel like we were really close to getting rid of alignment in this edition. I feel like the designers wanted to, but maybe they're afraid to. Like there's certain things that D&D just doesn't get the luxury of doing, like other role-playing games. When I hear people go, well, I would like to see D&D do something innovative. They thought they were trying that with the last edition, and they got slammed for it. So it's tough. Like D&D is like the bar that everyone is going to judge everything else by anyway. So it's hard to change core fundamental things about the game, like alignment. Mm-hmm. And and I guess like in my game, in our games as well, we like those hard definitions of what good and evil is. Sure, there's still room for shades of gray, mm-hmm. But at the same time, like we generally like to play heroes in our games, so we don't like evil characters in our game. Every once in a while it's fun, and if you can play a dark character and still ultimately work with the party, and you have things that line up to objectives that line up to their objectives, and it kind of works. That's okay, but evil generally is not good for the party. It's not fun, and I do like the hard lines, and I do like the idea of gods having other champions. Maybe they need to change the name of the class, and to better fit that, because paladin there's a specific definition for paladin if you look it up. But at the same time, I can definitely see other gods having champions. So maybe that needs to be something else. That and why not have them fueled by divine power as well? Mm-hmm. And then again, like necromancers, they like your thing is paladins, mine's necromancers. I'm mm-hmm. like, no way. If you're animating dead and you're raising the people to be your servants that were once living, there's no way you can be good. At the very least, you're stepping on taboos, and people wouldn't want that, for the most part, wouldn't want that done to their loved ones. Then there's the idea, are you trapping part of their spirit to animate the corpse? Is like, so you get into areas like that. I'm very much still kind of like with my cosmology, I'm still very much in the like AD&D era of things. And, you know, you're infusing these creatures with negative energy or necrotic energy at this point, which there is nothing good about that. It's like that. And necrotic is the antithesis to radiant, which is like good energy, bad energy. So like I'm with you in a lot of ways like that. Although there are some concepts that I think are fun to twist, like when we were playing the game at Gen Con and you were sitting next to me and you look down at my neutral evil paladin and you're like, you did that for me, didn't you? But in Eberron they have the Dark Six, and I find like the concept how they do their pantheons really interesting, and the idea that it was an idea I had for a character who actually was originally a cleric, but I felt he worked better with like the paladin suite of abilities.
So we could definitely. Oh, I got reverb now. Why am I hearing this?
You're hearing yourself. No.
Now we could definitely get on this track, but I was hoping Eberron would come up as a slight, a deviation or something, in that the game I ran last night, the first session of a new campaign where I was DMing on Fantasy Grounds, which is a whole new experience for me, is an Eberron campaign. And I'm not very familiar with the setting, with a lot of stuff, so I'm learning it as I go along. And there's a lot about it I'm enjoying. One of the the really difficult things is playing in someone else's setting, and because they've made it, they know at the ins and outs. You have to read excessively, and then even then there's a lot to unpack and to remember in playing in someone else's world. But that said, part of what I'm doing is I'm using 3.5, or actually 3rd edition adventures in 5e, which I see a lot of people have some issue with that. The stories are the same in any edition, and you can absolutely put that into place. So all I'm doing is just a little stat conversion and those kind of things. And, it's pretty enjoyable. Absolutely, to be learning Fantasy Grounds, to be in someone else's world. It feels uncomfortable because I have to make the world really vivid. Like I have to know the world, yet I am learning the world as I know the world. And it's been a tricky prospect to play someone else's setting. Maybe, do you have any more Eberron experience outside of our game at Gen Con, or?
Yeah, I actually, it's the only campaign setting I really ran in. But that being said, I also ran in it when it was early, right? So there wasn't as much lore, and at the time I was reading a lot of the novels. I ran a handful of one shots in Eberron, and I really tried to capture some of that noir feeling from those, where like the players would win, right? They would win the adventure, but they were still at the end of the adventure kind of left with this like empty, hollow feeling. But because it wasn't a complete victory. And that's how a lot of like the really good Eberron stories, I feel like, kind of go.
Okay. Yeah, I that's really good to hear, because I didn't necessarily pick that up from what I've been reading. I really like noir, and Sin City and Max Payne and those kind of things to me are just, they have a certain atmosphere that's really difficult to recreate sometimes, especially when their party is being silly and laughing and making jokes all the time. But yeah, that's, if I put noir in my brain, noir is almost always to me like a narrator in rain. Have lots of rain. It was a cold night sitting in the dark. I heard the town guard's whistle ring like the wailing of a manic depressive choir. I sat thinking, I'd done a lot of that lately. Yeah, like you got to have that kind of stuff, which is
the adventure that's in the campaign setting book, I believe, starts on a bridge and it's raining.
No, that's what I did. Yeah, that was the last one.
Yeah, so I feel like, especially if you stay like really to one of the major cities and kind of run like an urban campaign, It really captures that. I love
Okay.
Sharn. It's a lot of fun.
Curtains of water fall from the sky as you traverse the labyrinthine walkways of Sharn. The stone and wooden paths wind around between the towers and spires high above the ground, forming complex latticework that can be very confusing on evenings such as this. The rain falls hard, running off higher walkways and balconies in drenching waves, making it difficult to see much more than a few feet ahead of you. The distant glow of ever-bright lanterns, barely visible in the soaking gloom, does little to light the paths on this warm, wet evening. That's how it starts.
right from it. So Cardboard Fortress says Eberron to me is pulp action. It's that too. So like, they tried to make, I feel like they tried to make Eberron be a lot of different things, and it can play a lot of different ways. It just depends on what you want to do with it. So I saw a question earlier up from Elvidu, something along those lines. I'm probably totally butchering your username, but they wanted to know if you get paid to do D&D. And I think right now, Andrew bills himself as a professional DM. I bill myself as a professional nerd. So I would say, yes, you're going to work really, really hard and not make as much money as you would doing other things, but you can get paid to do D&D. But I would take that a step further. You can get paid to do any hobby or anything you're passionate about if you're creative and figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it took a long time, and I wouldn't hope to, just, oh, well, you get paid to be in D&D, so, well, I can do that because I know D&D. There's a lot more to it, and there's the building the audience. If I didn't have a YouTube channel, there's no way I could, have people seeking me out, you got to work hard to make the games really great, to be a great DM and making the players feel really involved and matter. There's self-promotion, which I hate doing. There's finding your own value, which has been very hard for me. I was a teacher, so I got paid the teacher's salary, which was, state mandated, that kind of stuff. But now when I'm off on my own, well, how much is my time worth? How much should I charge for a game? And it is not an easy situation. And it can make certain games and interactions a little different because, you're the people paid to be here. So that changes the dynamic a bit.
And there is a lot of different ways, like for tabletop RPGs, for this in particular, there's a lot of different ways you can actually earn an income. Running games is one of them. Entertainment is another, and they all kind of like feed into each other. Publishing is another, and there's probably things that I'm not even thinking about, and they all have problems and challenges.
I have to do all of them. You have your hands in all these different pots, and because, you're going to get burnt out, as I did running games for money. I did, like, absolutely. I needed to take a break. And now I'm running one not that way. I'm running fewer games as my publishing has improved. That becomes a bigger, revenue stream, and then balancing that with YouTube, and YouTube's, ads are apocalyptic this month and then not. And then Patreon, and what am I going to give to them? To have all these things, I'm definitely doing a lot better financially than I was as a teacher. But there's not just, I would die if all I was doing was running games for money all day and nothing else. Oh man, I would just give up. No.
Yeah, a buddy of mine who kind of like mentored me and tutored me when it came to internet marketing and doing that kind of stuff is like, you need seven streams of income. And it is so true, because a lot of times people forget. And if you're looking at doing something like this, you have to remember, when you go on YouTube, you don't own that. When you go on Patreon, you don't own that. When you're on Facebook, you don't own that. Even Google, you don't own any of that. So like, they can change the rules at any time, and that could drastically affect your income. Mm-hmm. And you need to know that going in. You can't. I see people bitch and whine about the adpocalypse, about Patreon. I'm like, what'd you expect? Like, you're using other people's stuff. This stuff can happen at any time. Maybe the problem isn't those platforms. Maybe the problem is how you're conducting your business, and you're not insulating yourself against those things, or you're not aware that they could happen.
Absolutely.
And you should be. It's like anything. You have to educate yourself, and unfortunately, you don't know what you don't know. That's one of the reasons why Nerdarchy has always maintained a website, because if we get shut out of some place where we were using predominantly, we can fall back to the website and we can modify, we can adapt, we can change if we need to. And that's the other thing you have to think about. And that's just like if you go into business for yourself, and as a general rule of thumb, there is just so much stuff that you just have to do and know about. Like at the end of the month, we have to sit down with the accountant for a few hours. Like that's a thing now. And it's just not. When you say, can I get paid to do D&D? Yes, you can, but you'll be doing a lot of other things as well. You're going to learn how to operate all kinds of technology you maybe didn't know how to use before. You're going to be doing the game. You're going to have to learn business practices. You're going to have to learn how to market yourself. You're going to have to get really good at social media, or you're going to have a lot of money to start off with. There's like all kinds of things that go into that.
Expect to be really tired, exhausted. Oop, again, the reverb again. In the transition, right, to go from whatever you're doing now to full time means you have to do both of them full time for at least a little while until one can take over. And that was really challenging for me and really scary. To say I'm going to put all my family's welfare and my livelihood on this instead of this, it was a big jump and a big risk and a lot of stress to get there. And I'm really blessed and thankful. But we can look at it just a very simple and recent example with Patreon, where they were going to add the fee, and that looked like the end of Patreon because it was just like people were dropping like, no way I'm paying that extra stuff. This is not going to be a great site. I started looking to other places. Thankfully, they rescinded it, but that's out of your control. And then add one more thing. It might be too late for a lot of people because the market is now heavily saturated. And, D&D is popular. Everyone's streaming, we're doing a game. Let's record it just cause, and let's put it out and hope it. You gotta work around algorithms that are boosting, I've got my video will come to the top. And if you're starting new, your video is going to be way down there on the searches. So you got to collaborate with the bigger channels to get them to, get eyes over to you. It's all about getting eyes on you. It doesn't matter your quality if no one's looking at you.
Truer words never spoken. Another thing I will disagree about is you can always. There's this idea of saturation that I just generally don't buy into. Now, you may not be able to do it the same way everyone did before you, but at the same time, you also get to look at what they did, and you have the advantage of that. For instance, like we started doing stuff and looking at Patreon and moving forward with Nerdarchy, and we looked at what you're doing, and we looked at you running games, and that was a big part of your income. And we said, wow, that guy's life must kind of suck because that is a lot of games to be running. I don't want to do that, and the other thing was like, in any business, it's like, can you leverage that? So, we said every time we do something, it's like, can we leverage this somehow?
You got to be like, I think a good example of a lot of growth in doing something different is Wet DM, who, and look, you might not know, but they have to, like, once a month, they set up the studio space, and even Jim was, I think he moved back now, but he was flying halfway across the country to go and film once a month. There's tons of editing. They've got a dude who, he's fantastic at lighting and editing and sound and all that. There's production value, and that's something that they're really hitting on. That's, really great. They've got the good dynamic between two guys, and that's not easy. That's not free. It's got nothing. It's a lot of hard work and sweat and money. Money and time is they're putting into this to make it happen and to do something different. Not that different. We all have videos on dwarves and fighters and stuff. Everyone's got their how to play this class video, but you have to do it in a really standout, different way. Like, Nerdarchy, I feel, has the great dynamic of multiple people. WebDM has their good back and forth and their production value. I would say mine is more of a technical educators kind of perspective on things. And I can screen share, so that helps a lot. But you have to kind of have your real voice, and then you got to work so hard at putting that out there so that other people can see it.
Absolutely. And you'll see people like, you'll see new people that are starting to rise to the top. Like Mr. Tarask is really new. He gained his first 1,000 subscribers really fast, and he's fun to watch, and he's really energetic. I remember, but like speaking of WebDM, I remember seeing like picture they shared on Facebook, and it was the first time they showed their camera setup, and I was like, oh man, that's like $6,000 sitting there.
Oh yeah,
yeah, at least. And I was like, and when people ask, well, why can't you do videos like WebDM? It's because I don't have to have it. We're $6,000 worth of equipment laying around. And then like their situation changed, and they had to, luckily it changed later, so they had to like scramble, and they've been making it work. But they like everyone, they've gone through challenges, so it's just part of the gig,
and they're still doing their full-time regular work too, on top of all this. But so I do think I think you're right
on those videos.
There are advantages to getting in now, in that because the audience size is, there's more people looking into D&D, you can get that initial audience growth pretty quickly, especially if you collaborate with the bigger channels, and have your own unique voice, have a good style, have good presentation. So it can work really well up to a point. And there's if you watch video makers, that channel is a really great one to learn about YouTube and how that works and those kind of things. There's a plateau. Like it's really hard to get your first 100, but once you get your first 100, then the 1,000's pretty easy. But then to go from 1,000 to 10,000 is like huge work. But then you have another boost from 10 to 20, goes really quickly, and those kind of things. You got to be prepared for those droughts.
When we first came into the space, and this is the thing that is really cool that I'm really enjoying, is when we first came in the space, you were at the 30,000 mark. Noah Atwell or Spoonie Counter Monkey was around the 30,000 mark, and then you had some channels that were like the 10,000 mark or the 5 to 10,000 mark, right? And there wasn't that many. In the 20 range, there was maybe a couple, and then it was like it me JP at 100,000. Then it was Geek and Sundry at 1 million. Like there was nothing in between. And now when you look, WebDM, they're going to get their silver play button this year. You got it last year. J is still growing. There's tons of other channels. Commander Holly Conrad has switched over, and she's doing more D&D stuff now.
That switch, you're going to see so many more of the video gamers or movie reviewers or whatever switch over, and they're gonna, absolutely, I'm seeing that too.
Pro Jared. Well, and you know what it is? It's because like before the space was so small, and they didn't think they could maybe do anything with it, or like many of us, they feel like it's okay to talk about it now. And that's a big thing. I know Holly Conrad has anxiety issues, so maybe she might not have just felt comfortable talking about it, and she cosplay was comfortable to her. But now she's playing on live stream games, she's starting to do videos, and we've got so many people that are in the 20,000 range, the 30,000 range for creators in the niche now. It's great for the hobby because I know like when you hit your 100,000, you're like, what am I going to do now? Like the next one is so far away, that's never going to happen. But I disagree, because of all these other channels are kind of chasing you and coming up as well. They're going to push you. They're going to push you further.
I hope so.
You're not done yet. The Geek and Sundry are going to go to several million, and JP is going to hit 1 million, and you're going to hit 1 million, and WebDM will hit 1 million. It's out there. People are looking for it. I've heard from industry people that we are about 75% to of what we were for this hobby in the 80s. And like they're saying like the hobby is like around 8 million now, where in the 80s it was like 24, 32 million people, and it really shrunk, but it feels bigger than ever.
It does feel like that, and I'm worried sometimes that it feels a bit echo chambery to me, in that because I don't really look to other communities and other things, it feel like your perspective on the way the hobby is going, and the personality and the tone of it and the growth of it, I can get a little blinders sometimes, especially when you get like even 5 comments of, I want, please do the Lich video. And I'm like, then I have to worry, oh no, they're just a bunch of evil goth power gamey, want to ruin the game and it's not, that's a big danger.
That's when you do what we did early on. And we did how to make a Lich player character. It was like 30 seconds. We're just like, no.
That's probably how I'm going to start the video.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to troll the internet a little bit. It gets you through the rough patches.
I've got a character that I've been using, and like, you also have to find the passion ebbs and flows. I was really into making tutorials when the game was new, but now I don't. Like, I already said all that stuff. So you have to find ways to kind of keep yourself excited. So me doing my Acumen character, who is non-PC, who's totally derisive, who's a know-it-all, and then to approach gaming topics from that perspective has been so nice to have that shift. But you got to be willing and able to do that.
So we are past the hour mark, and I have a doctor's appointment to get to. But I do appreciate you coming on. We can sit here probably talk for hours easily. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I'm sorry we didn't get to as many questions as maybe we normally do. We're just enjoying the conversation. Maybe next time we get Andrew on, we'll like preload the questions or something beforehand. Get you guys to send them to us. But until next time, stay nerdy.